My name is Gilyse Rivera. I'm a freshman at Queen's University of Charlotte, currently majoring in pre-nursing and on track to be in the nursing program in 2024 of the fall. I'm a former field hockey player here at Queen's and currently just spending a lot of my time nannying and doing schoolwork.
Cool. So if you could first start off, what stood out to you during your hand map?
So when you asked about the journey specifically, I would say the journey of injury that I've had over this past year. It's played a big role in my life. I've had a back injury that's kind of taken me out for some time. I've experienced some hamstring injuries, concussion, all of which kind of led me to leaving my sport among other factors. But I do believe that the injuries kind of shaped how my life has looked in the past year. So I would definitely say that was most prevalent.
Cool. And who stood out to you as your support system on the...
So I wrote my family in general. My mom is a surgical technologist in the hospital. And so during COVID, she was kind of in and out of the house all the time. I couldn't see her much. The only times that I could was when she had like long breaks of time off from work. But otherwise, I would also say my morality and also knowing that my actions affect other people and kind of just leading me back to staying home and all of those things. I would say my boyfriend, Andre, he was probably the person I saw the most during the pandemic just because his family and mine were always in close conjunction. Mm-hmm. My education, I think, too, was a big part of it. But, yeah.
Cool. What feelings came to mind when I asked you to think about the words COVID-19 pandemic?
So I wrote disappointing, lost opportunity, and conjunction in reference to combining my passions with others.
Mm-hmm. So just kind of moving on, where do you define home for you right now?
So right now home is in Claremont, Florida. I define home as kind of where the best people are, and I think those best people are my parents, of course. However, I do also consider home to be in Pennsylvania and New York within the tri-state area, just because that's kind of where I grew up. I was born in New York, and I also have a lot of friends in Pennsylvania from where I lived in high school.
And whereabouts were you born then?
I was born in Manhattan. My mom is actually a surgical technologist right now, but prior to that, she was a hotel manager at the Omni. And so she was working at that hotel and suddenly her water broke and here I am. So right in the middle of the city.
And then, so how long have you been in the Charlotte area?
So I've been in the Charlotte area since I got to school here in August. I got here August 8th, I want to say, about that time period. And I've been here ever since.
Cool. So if you could just kind of give me an overview on your experience during the last 2 years or more of the COVID-19 pandemic.
So in the past 2 years, I heard about COVID when I was a sophomore in March of high school. So I ended up hearing about it through a phone call from my superintendent. It was an automated voice message kind of stating that we would be out for about 2 weeks. And all my friends called one another and we were very, very excited about it. We kind of saw it as a little vacation, being that finals were coming up toward the end of the year. So we were very, very happy. But unfortunately, we didn't know how much of an impact it would have on other people. We did end up kind of getting a second call a little bit of time later that kind of announced that we would not be going back for the rest of sophomore year. Mm-hmm. Throughout that time, we continued completely virtually. That was extremely hard because none of us had ever done it. And my school is a very hands-on school in a sense that we don't use a lot of technology to begin with, mainly just to submit assignments, but everything else was done otherwise. And I think that a big part of it, like coming out of that, we were also given the unfortunate opportunity to experience a very confusing junior year. So that was consistent of hybrid, in which every other day I would be virtual and every other day I would be in person. So in a sense, kind of doing that, it was completely different. But I think that because of that, I gave myself the opportunity to be in person part-time rather than full-time. So I basically would be able to stay home if I needed to because of my mother and because of my brother also working in healthcare as an aseptic technician. So I wanted the opportunity to be able to say, I can do this from home and I have to stay home because of something that may have gone on through passing COVID from one to another. But it definitely looked a lot different. It definitely taught me how to use my resources differently, educationally wise. But yeah.
Definitely. And can you remember the first few days of lockdown? Like, what was that like for you, being confined to home, not being able to go out?
Yeah. I think my first few days of lockdown, I really remember at first kind of questioning a lot of the things, like how long is this going to be? Is this going to be just another 2-week thing per se? Or is this like the rest of my life. No one ever really knew. So I remember questioning it a lot. And it was also really unfortunate because I had just gotten my permit the week before. So I spent a lot of my time driving in the car with the windows up because we were all terrified because it's supposedly airborne and things like that, with the little science we knew of it. So I spent a lot of my time doing that. But I was also really disappointed, I remember, because I am very extroverted. I love to see my friends and things of that nature. So it definitely was a lot harder.
And then what was it like when you went back to school with social distancing, with masks, with the hybrid? How did you find that?
So I had been attending the same building since about 6th grade. The only thing that separates my middle school and my high school are 2 big double doors and a security guard that says you can't come over here. So my entire school was very, very different when I got back. It looked completely different. There were some rooms had curtains in front of them because someone who had COVID just was sitting in the classroom the day before, so nobody could go in there because they didn't know how to handle it. They didn't know if maybe we deep clean this, it'll be gone, or maybe we don't and it's still there, So it was very, very different. And there would be the social distance stickers on the floor. We even had the porta potty kind of sinks and hand soaps outside of the cafeteria, and we weren't allowed to enter the cafeteria until we washed our hands thoroughly, dried them, everything. A security guard was there kind of just practically literally watching every student doing so. So it was very different, and it was in a way kind of hard to see that the world was changing in a sense that my middle school was completely different. My high school was completely different. It was sad to see it in a way that I'd never seen.
And did you find yourself struggling with the social distancing? Did you find that hard?
In a sense, no, just because of how my mom and my brother kind of emphasized the importance of it to me at home. I think it was weird for sure. I definitely took it as something completely different. Not realizing how much you kind of are closer to people in day-to-day life, even just doing simple things like handing over a coffee at a restaurant and things like that. So I think that was definitely a wake-up call, but not necessarily something that was hard to do. Once I kind of was in a room full of stickers that told me where to stand, I was very, very easily attached to those.
Definitely. And did you feel like your relationships with your family and your friends changed because of the pandemic? And how?
Yeah, I think that I became a lot closer to a lot of people. I do think, unfortunately, there are some people in my life that maybe just don't confide as much and also just took the pandemic a lot harder in a sense than I did. Also, unfortunately, suffered a few losses, which thankfully I didn't. So I think that, in a sense, also pushed some people to kind of take advantage of being in lockdown and hide away and not really build upon relationships. But I do think the majority of the people that I have relationships with ended up getting a lot stronger because all you could really do was talk to other people virtually rather than see them in person. So I think that they definitely did improve over time.
And do you feel like your learning experiences were affected by COVID? Do you feel like you were behind? Do you think it helped you for college?
At first, I do think I was behind because I was just very terrified. I let the fear kind of consume me of just knowing that other things would be ahead. But I noticed very quickly within the first 2 weeks of COVID, and just kind of how my school handled it with doing everything all virtual towards the last 2 months of my sophomore year, and then suddenly half and half kind of virtual and brick and mortar. That kind of threw me for a loop at first, and I was definitely scared, but I think that I definitely adjusted to it pretty fast. And once I did, I kind of enjoyed it, just knowing that it possibly would help me in college, and I definitely think it did, just because hybrid classes here are still a thing. I actually took one my first semester in the fall, and I think it was super easy compared to maybe what it would have looked like for me had I never done hybrid classes. So when I had experienced a full schedule of hybrid classes, I was completely prepared. I think it did help in a way, and it also taught me that I can do hard things in a sense that I can adjust myself very quickly in a way that I thought I wouldn't be able to. I definitely thought it was going to be a harder task than it was for me.
And do you feel like doing classes at home during that time, did you find it difficult concentration-wise? Did you find it easy to focus on the classes?
Yeah, I definitely at first found it really difficult because, it was more so guilty pleasure kind of things. Do I want to lay in bed and look at this, or do I want to sit at my desk and look at this, And I, too, am guilty of laying at bed with the computer open and not really looking at it, or just hearing the teacher talk and just dozing off because it's 7 a.m. And things like that. But I think that it definitely got a lot easier as I started to enjoy that kind of learning and started to enjoy the fact that I was capable of doing it so quickly, which is fortunate because I know it wasn't a lot the same situation for other people. But I think in a sense that it was very, very enlightening, and I think that I was also really able to kind of grasp onto it, and it was a lot less unfortunate the more I got used to it.
And what did you feel like you missed most during the pandemic?
I'm a very very extroverted person, so I definitely think just more so being able to see my friends and go somewhere rather than having to call them and be like, hey, how's your house doing? Kind of how's the health of your family, which obviously is something you ask regularly, but not something as regularly as you would have asked in COVID. I mean, it was kind of sad in a way having to have conversations about other people's health rather than what they're doing in their life and how their goals are being fixed and everything like that, or going along and progressing. It was definitely changing conversations that I was having, and so I definitely think it definitely impacted that.
Definitely. And let's see, was there a time that you ever stepped in to help somebody that was affected by COVID?
I definitely think there was, in a way that I could have done more. I'm not too sure. I do have a friend. She's very, very quiet and reserved when it comes to her emotions, and more so extroverted when it comes to kind of building on a relationship that doesn't require that. And she, at the time, her father was immunocompromised. He was on dialysis due to an alcohol addiction that he had previously in his life. So I think a big part of that was just kind of knowing she's not as expressive. And so in a way, I did feel as though responsible to help her, and I did as much as I could to aid her emotionally. But also when someone's not giving you that access to their life as much, it's a little difficult to do that. But if anyone was to come to mind, it'd be her.
Absolutely. And do you think that the pandemic has changed your normal routines?
In a way, I think it does. I use hand sanitizer a lot more than I normally would. I also think it helps that I'm taking microbiology right now, so it's just kind of on the forefront of my mind all the time, public health, just how my actions affect others and things like that. So I definitely think it's just made me more aware of how to better other people's public health through my own actions. So in a sense, yeah, I think it changes the day-to-day. I wash my hands way more than I normally would have before, just because it wasn't prevalent on my mind. And also I was a lot younger. So I was, I guess, a lot more uneducated on that kind of thing, and how me simply not washing my hands after going to like a kid's playground could do something terrible to someone else, Yeah,
definitely. And what were some of the challenges that you faced during the pandemic?
So during that time, I was referencing the time that I was a junior in high school. I was in my field hockey season during the fall. And that was really different because in my previous seasons through freshman and sophomore year, which thankfully COVID happened after my sophomore fall season. But I ended up remembering that I kind of had 24 to 29 games on those seasons. And then in junior year, I ended up having about 10, maybe 12. And it was always kind of a matter of, is it going to even like get to the end? Are we even going to have a senior night? Are we even going to be able to do all the fun things? Simple things like senior night looks completely different. And so we were just, completely appalled by it. We were even shut down for about 2 weeks due to our assistant coach having COVID. So I think that was a really big experience that comes back when I think about it. I also think that I was in the heat of recruiting during my junior year. So also being excited about being able to talk to other schools, but not being able to really show them more or act on it was really difficult. And it also did make me really worried about what my future may look like, or if I would even be able to be recruited.
Definitely. And what are some long-lasting consequences of the pandemic?
I think some long-lasting consequences of the pandemic for me more so are, again, referencing like my knowledge about public health. Also just kind of knowing that because I want to be a nurse, the hospital that I imagined myself going into when I was younger is completely different now. It was a great opportunity to see science develop, but I also think that it did change my expectations a lot. But more so in a way that I'm excited to do it. I'm excited to be a part of that change and excited to be a part of something that furthers the aid of the world rather than something that was, I guess, inhibiting it. So yeah, that's what I would say.
And then what are some good things that you've learned through your experience during the pandemic?
I think I learned that, like I said before, I can do hard things. I can do things like learning how to, learn virtually and things like that. That was something I never thought I would be good at, just because I would still classify myself as a better hands-on learner regardless. But knowing that I can do it and that I'm very capable of keeping up with it and not kind of giving up in a sense was really exciting. And I also think that I kind of took with it just the idea that I am capable of being a lot more personable than I thought. Not that I wasn't a kind person prior, but I think it's brought me a lot more empathy to other people, knowing that there's a story to be told in everyone's family. And something that we didn't consider beforehand is if people are living with immunocompromised individuals. And so kind of just referencing that thought and just how prevalent it was in our minds then versus where it is now is something completely different to me. And I think that kind of carry along with me as well. I do think about that often for people. And I do wonder if maybe at home, there's something I could be doing indirectly to be able to better their life.
And how do you think that your life has changed since March 2020?
I think that it's changed drastically. If you asked me who I was in March 2020, I was a field hockey player. I was also a high school student. At the time, I worked as a lifeguard at Great Wolf Lodge in Scott Run Poconos with my friends every summer. So I'm a completely different person. I nanny now in the state of North Carolina and Charlotte, which, at the time I didn't know I was going to end up in Charlotte until I kind of did. So it definitely looks a lot different. I don't play field hockey anymore due to my injuries, among other things. And yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would really say that didn't change was my hair color and probably just what I wanted to do with my life in terms of my education.
Mm-hmm. And how has this experience shaped you as a person?
I think it shaped me to be kinder. I think it's shaped me to be more considerate of others. And I also think that it's also just made me really excited for the future. I think it really solidified for me that science is my place and science is my calling and that's what I want to do. So in a way, I think it shaped me to kind of agree and assert my goals.
And how do you think your future will look like now?
I think it'll look really different because I expected it to be one thing in 2020. So now I'm a bit more weary of the fact that the world can completely change, especially going back to the thought of being in a hospital that I thought was once going to be one way and now is a completely other way. So all of those things in general kind of in conjunction just make me think about how quick that expectation can change. But I do think that it'll look a bit more developed than it is now.
Mm-hmm. And so what sort of area do you want to go into now as a nurse?
So I lean towards pediatrics. Not that I don't care about older individuals, but I do find a lot more fun and sympathy dealing with kids. I mean, that's kind of why my job is always selected to children in a way. I enjoy making them happy. I enjoy learning with them. And I also just like being an educator for them in a way. At my nannying house the other day, I was looking at my computer doing homework and one of my kids, she goes, "What are you learning about?" And I was like, "Oh, just microbes." And she's like, "What is that?" And so I just love how insightful they are, how much they want to learn. And I just appreciate that I can be able to give back to them in a way.
And do you think watching your mom during the pandemic has made your desire to be a nurse stronger than it was before?
I think it definitely does, just because I saw the sacrifice she gave, but I also saw how rewarding it was for her in a sense. She would be in her bedroom and I would be maybe the floor down from her and getting a text from her saying "Hey, I love you. Just no, I have to do this for other people," and things like that. So it definitely made me admire her way more than I thought I could. Just because, her selflessness was insane during that time, especially with my brother. I mean, he was literally cleaning hospitals. So he was at, so much more risk, I feel. So in a sense, just kind of hearing from both of them and hearing how they were both able to kind of just put other people before themselves was really nice. So yeah, I definitely think that I want to be able to do that for other people and that it increased my passion for nursing.
Right. Those are all my questions. Thank you.